I watched my twin walk down the aisle in my wedding dress, smiling with my face. Everyone thought I'd lost my mind, until she made one mistake. I've kept quiet for years, but I can't anymore. My twin sister Emma started studying me the moment I got engaged. Not just watching, studying. Like she was collecting data. At first I brushed it off. She was just curious, right? But then she got my exact haircut. Started mirroring my clothes. And one night I realized she'd been recording my phone calls, without my permission. On my wedding day she came into the bridal suite with champagne and strawberries, grinning like the perfect sister. We toasted. Again. And again. Until my head was spinning and my vision went soft around the edges. The last thing I remember clearly is her pulling my wedding dress from a garment bag and saying, in the calmest voice imaginable, "Becoming you. I've practiced everything." When I'd first told my family I was marrying David, Emma had burst into tears. I thought it was just bad timing. She'd just been dumped for the 5th time that year. Her ex told her she was too intense. But then the little changes started. She studied my hand gestures when I talked. She started wearing the same outfits. David even mentioned she'd been asking detailed questions about our relationship. At the time I thought it was sweet. That was before the Tom incident. Emma had been thrilled when a guy named Tom asked her out. But on their first date, she exploded at the waitress for forgetting a straw. She convinced herself the waitress was flirting with him. The whole thing fell apart and I was left comforting her. A week later at my office party, Tom hit on me. I shut it down immediately, but Emma saw. From there it was like watching her morph into me piece by piece. She grilled me about my skincare routine, saying, "I just want to look polished like you." I caught her once in the bathroom mirror, practicing my smile, twisting her face into expressions that didn't belong to her. Then came the night I heard my own laugh coming from her room at 2 a.m. She'd been playing back recordings of my phone calls. I tried to ignore it, until I borrowed her laptop one day for work. In her files were dozens of spreadsheets about me and David, color-coded by pet names, inside jokes, even the most intimate details. When I showed my family, they sided with her. She cried on cue, "Why is Sarah making me feel crazy?" They called me a bridezilla. In the months before my wedding, she started showing up at my job pretending to be me. She knew my projects, my deadlines, my coworkers' gossip. And then she took it further. David texted me one afternoon, "I love our little moments. Can't believe I ran into you today." My blood ran cold. I hadn't seen him. Turned out Emma went to his office pretending to be me. He even kissed her. When I told David, he thought I was just stressed. "Babe, you literally ate half my sandwich," he said. He thought I'd forgotten. Even my mom finally looked concerned, promising to get Emma tested for something. 6 months passed without a word from her. Then on my wedding day she showed up early, buzzing with energy that made my skin crawl. She poured glass after glass of champagne, saying, "Hydration's important for photos." By the 3rd glass the room tilted. She steadied me with fake concern, helped me sit, and then pulled my wedding dress from her bag. "I know David's favorite positions, how he likes his eggs, that birthmark on his inner thigh," she whispered. And that's when the world went black. I woke up on the bathroom floor, cheek against cold tile. My dress was hanging on the door. My body felt heavy, useless. The door was locked from the outside. Through the fog I heard voices. My mother's laugh. David's voice. And Emma, speaking in my exact tone, using my inflections. The sound of champagne glasses clinking again. I tried to make myself vomit, but nothing came up. Whatever she'd given me was already in my system. I splashed water on my face, drank from the faucet, searched for a way out. The window was painted shut. I found nail scissors in my makeup bag and began scraping at the seal, hands trembling. Time blurred. Then footsteps. The lock clicked. Emma stepped in, wearing my dress. Our dress. It fit perfectly, of course. We were identical. She'd even drawn on my beauty mark. My engagement ring on her hand caught the light. "The photographer wants some getting ready shots," she said casually. "I told them you had a nervous breakdown and locked yourself in here. They all believed me." She hauled me into the bathtub like I weighed nothing. My limbs hung useless, my body refusing to respond. The porcelain was ice cold beneath my slip, and then shock. She cranked on the shower, blasting me with freezing water until my chest heaved and I sputtered for air. "Can't have you making noise," she murmured, twisting the faucet so it was just a trickle, cold enough to bite into my skin. "This should keep you awake. I want you to see everything." She left without another glance, locking the door behind her. Water dripped onto my face, slow and relentless. I fought to keep my eyes open. If I blacked out now, I knew I'd wake up to a reality I couldn't undo. From the other side of the door, I heard voices. My bridesmaids. Laughter. And then her laugh, my laugh cutting through like a cruel echo. She'd perfected it so well that even I almost believed it. I pulled myself upright, every muscle trembling. My phone, I needed my phone. I tore through my clutch, patted down the pockets of my robe hanging from the hook. Nothing. She'd taken it. Of course she had. But I still had the nail scissors. I staggered to the window, scraping at the paint seal until my hand slipped. A sharp sting, blood smeared on the white frame where I'd sliced myself. "Sarah, we need you." My maid of honor's voice floated through the door. Only, she wasn't calling for me. "Coming." Emma sang back, perfectly imitating me. "Just fixing my mascara." Moments later, the voices faded as they left for photos. The suite went quiet. My fingers worked frantically. The window finally creaked open, spilling a rush of fresh air into the stifling room. Salvation and a dead end. 3 stories up. No fire escape. No ledge. Just a hard drop to concrete. I spun back to the door. The lock was simple. A bobby pin could do it. I yanked one from my hair, my hands steadying with focus. Click. The suite was empty, littered with champagne flutes and makeup palettes. I lunged for the hotel phone, dead. The cord had been cut. My legs buckled. I dropped to my knees and crawled to the hallway. It was empty, everyone was outside posing for pictures. I took the stairs, gripping the railing, counting steps like it was the only thing keeping me from collapsing. Second floor. First floor. Lobby. And there she was. By the fountain in my wedding dress, David's arm around her waist. Laughing my laugh. Tilting her head just the way I do. I stumbled forward, catching myself against a pillar. A hotel employee rushed over. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I tried to form words, but my tongue felt like lead. He already had his radio out. I pointed, my voice rasping. "That's not me." His eyes followed my finger. Emma kissed David's cheek as the bridesmaids adjusted her train. My mom stood nearby, dabbing at her eyes. "Security to lobby," he said. "We've got an intoxicated guest." I shook my head furiously, but my knees gave out. He caught me gently. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Emma noticed us. She whispered something to the photographer, then floated toward us, every step measured. "Oh my goodness," she gasped, covering her mouth in mock horror. "Emma, what are you doing?" The guard looked between us, realization flickering. Twins. One soaking wet in a slip, the other in a pristine gown. "I'm so sorry," she continued smoothly, eyes welling with on-demand tears. "This is my sister. She's been having a rough time with my engagement. We thought she was better." "No," I croaked. "I'm Sarah. She's Emma." But I could hear how unhinged I sounded, hair plastered to my head, makeup smeared, pupils wide. I was the picture of instability. David stepped forward. "My chance. Baby, it's me." He stepped back. Just one small step, but it splintered something deep inside me. Emma slid her hand into his, my hand gesture, my touch. "She's been doing this for weeks," she said softly, playing the wounded bride. "The birthmark." I blurted. "You have a birthmark on your thigh." David's face went crimson. Emma gave his hand a squeeze, my squeeze, and said, "She must have seen it when she broke into our apartment. Remember when we found her in our bed?" It never happened. But he was already nodding, piecing together false memories that made the lie fit. "Should we call the police?" The guard asked over his radio. "No," Emma said quickly. "She's family. We'll handle it. Just help us get her somewhere quiet." They were all looking at me with pity now. My friends. My parents. David. I'd become the unstable sister who snapped at her twins' wedding. David and the guard each took an arm, guiding me down the hall. Emma followed, her mask of concern never slipping. They sat me in a small conference room. Emma asked for a moment alone. The guard hesitated. "It's fine," she assured him, all gentle smiles. "She's my sister. She won't hurt me." The door shut. And then her face changed, melting into something cold. Triumphant. "You should see yourself," she sneered. "Pathetic." I lunged. She sidestepped easily. I crashed into the chairs, sending them clattering to the floor. "They'll figure it out," I gasped. "You can't be me forever." She straightened her dress, my dress, with delicate precision. "Now I know everything. Your first date at that Italian place. The song you danced to last Tuesday. The way you bite your lip when you're nervous." She bit her lip perfectly. "You made it easy," she went on. "Always posting. Always talking." I just listened. "David will know," I said. "When you're alone he'll know." Her smile was my smile. "Will he?" "I've been preparing for months. I know exactly what he expects." The door cracked open. My mom peeked in. "Sweetheart, the photographer needs you back. We can deal with," she glanced at me, "this after the ceremony." "Of course, Mom." Emma kissed her cheek, another stolen gesture. "Could you stay with her? Make sure she doesn't hurt herself." My mother nodded, moving toward me like I was a feral animal. Emma lingered at the doorway, looking back one last time. "Don't worry," she said sweetly. "I'll take good care of your life." The door clicked shut, and I was alone with my mother. She lingered at the entrance, wringing her hands like the perfect, nervous bride. Her gown was flawless, every hair in place, while I sat there soaked to the bone, shaking so hard my teeth almost rattled. I tried to stand, but my legs buckled under me. Whatever Emma had given me was still burning through my system, making every step feel like I was wading through wet cement. My mother moved toward me slowly, like she was approaching a wounded animal. She guided me into a chair, gentle but not warm. Like I was something fragile and dangerous. I grabbed her wrist, desperate for her to see. To get it. But she pulled away, shaking her head with this sad, disappointed look. I pointed at myself, then toward the door where Emma had left moments ago, but my mother just patted my shoulder. Told me to rest. She believed Emma's version of reality, the one where I was the jealous twin, obsessed with ruining her wedding. The conference room had a small attached bathroom. I stumbled toward it, using the wall for balance. My mother followed, probably thinking she was preventing me from hurting myself. The mirror explained everything. My hair was matted from that freezing shower, streaks of mascara running down my face in black rivers. My slip clung to me, transparent in spots. I looked exactly like the unhinged sister Emma had been describing to everyone for months. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to chase the fog away. It helped, but not enough. Emma knew everything about me, every story, every inside joke with David, every personal quirk. My mother handed me paper towels, watching me with that same pitying expression that made my stomach turn. The ceremony would start any minute. If I didn't stop her, Emma would walk down the aisle in my dress, say my vows, kiss my fiancé. Back in the conference room, I spotted a water pitcher on the table and drank straight from it. No time for glasses. Every drop might help dilute whatever was still in my system. Voices drifted down the hallway, guests laughing, excited. My wedding day playing out without me. I moved toward the door, but my mom blocked it gently, telling me I should lie down, rest before the big moment. Her voice was the same one she used when we were kids with fevers. But I wasn't sick. I was trapped. The door opened and my dad stepped in, looking stiff and uncomfortable in his tuxedo. His gaze swept over me and I could see the disappointment. Emma had gotten to him too. He mumbled something about getting help after the wedding, the words blurred together as tears burned my eyes. When he left, the door stayed open for just a second, enough for me to glimpse the hallway filling with guests. The wedding coordinator buzzed past, clipboard in hand, making sure everything was perfect for the bride. For her. I realized then I couldn't just fight my way through this. I had to outplay her. Emma might have studied me for months, but she couldn't possibly know everything. There had to be something she couldn't fake. So I sat back down, acting like I was calming down. My mother's shoulders dropped in relief. She started talking about how beautiful Emma looked in the dress, how happy she seemed. Each word sliced through me, but I nodded and stayed quiet. The fog in my head began to lift. I could feel my fingers again. My movements were more steady, but I kept them slow, letting her believe I was still too out of it to cause trouble. When my mom's phone buzzed, she smiled. The photographer wanted more shots. She told me she'd be right back. I nodded, head down. The second the door shut, I moved. They hadn't bothered locking it. I stepped into the hallway, staying against the wall as guests milled around. My slip was still damp and clinging, but I had bigger problems. I had to find David before the ceremony started. He was my only hope. I ducked into a supply closet and found housekeeping uniforms hanging on hooks. I pulled one over my slip, baggy, but better than looking like an escapee from a psych ward. I ran my fingers through my hair, wiped away the worst of the makeup streaks, and stepped back out pushing a cart stacked with towels. I followed the crowd until I found the ballroom, my ballroom, marked by the white roses and baby's breath I'd chosen myself. Through the cracked door I could see the space transformed into the wedding I'd spent months planning. Hundreds of candles, draped white fabric, a flower-covered altar. Perfect. About to be stolen. David's groomsmen were at the front, straightening ties and cracking jokes. Our friends. People who should have known me well enough to tell the difference. The coordinator's voice cut through the chatter, telling everyone to get into position. My stomach dropped. The music started. Bridesmaids floated down the aisle in the lavender dresses I'd picked to flatter everyone's skin tone. The flower girl scattered petals. The ring bearer, David's nephew, shuffled along in his tiny tux. Then the music shifted to the wedding march. Everyone stood. Emma appeared in the doorway, arm in arm with our father. She changed that detail I'd planned to walk alone. That tiny deviation lit a spark of hope in my chest. Her veil hid her face, but I could still see the smile. My smile. I stayed in the shadows, heart pounding. She was halfway down the aisle when I spotted it, something no one else would notice. She was holding her bouquet wrong. Both hands clamped around the stems at her waist. I always held mine low, one hand supporting it, the other resting lightly on top. It was small. Subtle. But it was proof, to me at least, that she wasn't perfect. Our father kissed her cheek, placed her hand in David's. The officiant began to speak, welcoming everyone to the celebration of Sarah and David's love. Every second was agony. If I didn't act now, she'd take my vows, my name, my life. And the worst part? One wrong move and they'd still think I was just the jealous, unhinged sister crashing the wedding. The officiant's voice cut through the room. If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. My heart slammed against my ribs. This was it, my one shot. But before I could move, Emma's head turned just slightly, scanning the crowd. She was looking for me, making sure I wasn't there to ruin her perfect little heist. The tilt of her chin was so subtle anyone else would have missed it, but I didn't. David didn't notice. He was locked on her or on who he thought was me. And just like that, the moment was gone. The officiant moved on and my window closed. They were on to the vows now. I backed away from the side door, my pulse racing. Emma thought she'd covered every angle, but she'd made mistakes. The bouquet grip. Choosing to walk with our father instead of alone. Tiny cracks in the armor. And then it hit me, the vows. David and I had written our own, spending weeks perfecting them. We'd kept them secret from each other, determined to make that moment a surprise. Emma couldn't possibly know mine. She'd have to wing it. I slipped through a service hallway that ran behind the altar, stopping at a door cracked just enough for me to hear. David's voice came first. Thick with emotion, he talked about the moment he knew I was the one, how I'd changed his life, how he couldn't wait for the rest of forever. His words wrapped around me like a memory, and it hurt, because they were mine. They belonged to me, not to the imposter in my dress. Then it was her turn. She started fine, safe, vague lines about love and commitment. But as she went on, I could hear the edges fraying. She was reaching, trying to mimic my tone while stringing together generic filler. David's brow furrowed, just a hair. He could tell something was off. My vows would have been peppered with our inside jokes, the weird little stories no one else knew. Hers sounded like she'd lifted them from the back of a Hallmark card. And then she froze. Mid-sentence. The silence stretched until guests started shifting in their seats. The officiant glanced at her. Emma gave a soft, awkward laugh, blaming wedding jitters, then plowed ahead, but it was too late. David was watching her differently now, his eyes narrowing slightly behind the veil. This was my opening. The door behind me swung open and a catering staffer slipped in with a tray. I caught their arm, my voice urgent but low. "There's an emergency with the bride." They blinked, startled, then hurried toward the coordinator. I watched them whisper together, the coordinator's face tightening as they both glanced toward Emma. The coordinator approached the altar, leaned in to say something to her. Whatever it was, Emma's spine stiffened, her grip on David tightening. She shook her head sharply. Guests began murmuring. Our mother half rose from her chair. The officiant cleared his throat, trying to keep things on track. And then Emma swayed, pressing a hand to her forehead in a perfect little performance. David caught her. The coordinator called for water. The ceremony stalled and I slipped in through the service door dressed like hotel staff, weaving through the crowd with a glass of water in hand. Emma was seated on the steps of the altar now, bouquet in her lap. The veil was pushed back, her face exposed, my face, but her eyes were all Emma, sharp, calculating. I offered the water, my hands shaking. When our fingers brushed, her gaze locked onto mine. She knew. We stayed frozen for a heartbeat, two identical faces, two completely different souls. Then she sipped delicately, her lips curling into my smile. David was still beside her, concern in his eyes, but under it something else, doubt. Emma stood, handed off the glass, and thanked me in a voice so perfectly pitched it sent a shiver up my spine. But I saw it, the tremor in her hand. She was feeling the strain. The officiant suggested they continue. David hesitated, studying her face. His hand went to her chin, tilting it up like he was searching for something, searching for me. Emma must have sensed she was losing him, because she pulled him into a kiss. Not the sweet, brief kind we'd planned for the ceremony, this was long, urgent, meant to drown out his thoughts. The guests applauded. But I saw his surprise. We'd agreed, no kiss until after the pronouncement. Emma didn't know that. When they broke apart, her smile was dazzling but brittle. She urged the officiant to keep going. The rings came next. David slid hers on without faltering, but his eyes never left her face. When she tried to put his on, the ring slipped from her shaking hands and hit the floor with a ping that made the whole room flinch. I was moving before anyone else. I knelt to help search, and when David straightened with the ring in his palm, our eyes met. Really met. Recognition flashed across his face, quick, confused, but real. Emma yanked him back into position, forcing the ring onto his finger with a smile that was starting to crack. Then came the unity candle. David's mother had requested it. His grandmother had taught us the exact words, a little family tradition. Emma had no idea what those words were. She picked up her candle like she belonged there, but her eyes flickered. David was waiting. The officiant was waiting. And Emma had nothing. David prompted her softly. His grandmother leaned forward, ready to hear the words. And I knew this was it. Why did she keep tripping over little details after studying me for months? The bouquet grip. The awkward ring exchange. Not knowing the family candle tradition. For someone who'd built this scheme so carefully, the cracks felt almost careless, like she'd built the perfect mask but never learned how to breathe inside it. When the officiant prompted her for the unity candle words, Emma's mouth opened, then closed. She had nothing. The silence stretched until the air felt heavy. Guests began to murmur. David's jaw tightened, the pieces starting to click. I stepped forward from the shadows, not charging in, just enough for him to see me. Our eyes locked. I mouthed the phrase, our phrase, the one his grandmother had taught us, the one we'd botched a dozen times laughing in the kitchen. His face drained of color. He looked at Emma. At me. Back at Emma. The candle trembled in his hand. She tried to recover with some vague speech about unity and love, but it was too late. His grandmother was already shaking her head, telling the people beside her, "That's not it." David set his candle down without lighting the center flame. The break in tradition rippled through the crowd like a shiver. He took a slow step back from Emma, his eyes locked on hers. Emma reached for him, too quickly, too desperately. The sharp edge in her voice was all wrong. My mother stood, concern breaking her face, my father followed, glancing between them. The coordinator hovered, ready to step in. And then David pulled free. Each step he took toward me was deliberate, heavy with decision. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. When he reached me, his hand came up to my cheek, warm and familiar. I leaned into it, tears spilling. It was home. Behind him, Emma made a sharp, guttural sound. He turned back to her, voice calm but pointed, asking her to tell him about our first date, not the where but the what. The fire alarm. The breadsticks in the parking lot. The way we laughed in the dark. Her face went blank. She wasn't there. She didn't know. David's gaze hardened. He walked past her to the officiant, speaking quietly. A moment later, the officiant addressed the room, announcing a postponement. Gasps. Confusion. My mother rising to her feet again. My father's voice cutting in, sharp with questions. Emma's voice climbed higher, insisting everything was fine, until she spun toward me, screaming my real name. The slip hit like a detonator. She called herself Sarah. She called me Emma. The room shifted. Eyes darted between us. The realization spread like wildfire, in the way I held David's hand, in the stance that was mine alone, in 1,000 details her mimicry had missed. Emma saw it too. She tried to claw it back, but the words were already out there. The bridesmaids whispered, pointing out things they'd noticed but ignored. Security edged closer. The coordinator was on her phone. My grandmother crossed herself, muttering about Malocchio. Emma made one last wild move, ripping off the veil and throwing it at me, shrieking that I'd stolen her life. I understood what she meant, even if no one else did. In her mind, my happiness was theft. My love was hers by right. My mother approached her slowly, voice soft, the way she used to be when Emma had childhood meltdowns. But Emma was beyond soothing. She ranted about being second, about never getting enough, about deserving what I had. The seams of my dress ripped under her fists as she gestured wildly, a sound that felt like the final collapse of this entire charade. David pulled me close, blocking me from the worst of it, but I couldn't look away. My twin, the girl who shared my face, being dragged from the ballroom, screaming she was the real bride. When the guests finally began to leave, the coordinator asked quietly if we wanted to go through with it anyway. I looked around at the wreckage, toppled chairs, scattered flowers, the unity candle on its side, and shook my head. Not cancelled. Just postponed. We needed time. David and I slipped out the back through the service hall, ending up in the hotel garden where we'd once thought about holding the ceremony. The sunset bled into pinks and golds. I leaned into him and let it all crash down, the fear, the drugged haze, the theft of my day, my identity. He held me steady the way only he could. When I could breathe again, we talked, about the signs we'd missed, about how far back her obsession might have gone. He admitted he'd felt something off the moment she walked down the aisle, but told himself it was nerves. The candle had been the final straw. Hotel staff returned my phone, dozens of missed calls and messages. I shut it off. Tomorrow would be for questions and lawyers. Tonight would be ours. We ordered room service in our honeymoon suite, me still in the oversized housekeeping uniform, him in his suit. It wasn't the night we'd planned, but it was real. He found our first dance song on the hotel speaker system. We swayed barefoot on the carpet, my head on his chest, his arms holding me close. This was what she could never steal. The quiet, the knowing, the kind of love you can't counterfeit no matter how perfectly you copy the smile. And as we turned in that small, private circle, I realized she hadn't just failed to take my life, she'd proven how much it was mine. Morning came like a spotlight I never asked for, sunlight slicing through the hotel curtains, far too bright for the day after that. Italian grandmas don't play about wedding traditions, and Emma had flubbed the wrong unity candle phrase. That single slip was all it took for David's family radar to kick in faster than hotel security. Within minutes, the entire ballroom had turned into a live game of spot the difference with the twins, and Emma's carefully polished mask had cracked into a full-on villain meltdown. My head still throbbed from whatever she'd slipped me, but David was already in motion. He paced the suite in his wrinkled wedding suit, phone to his ear, calmly dismantling our wedding one vendor at a time. The florist, the DJ, the caterer, each call was handled with steady patience, like this was just another business deal. A knock on the door brought the hotel manager, with security footage in hand. They wanted to file a report about Emma drugging me. I shook my head. No police. No courts. This was staying in the family. The manager didn't like it, but he agreed, adding that Emma was now permanently banned from the property. My phone was a wall of notifications, over 100 missed calls and texts from family, friends, vendors. I scrolled without replying, while David calmly negotiated with the florist about donating thousands of dollars in roses so they wouldn't die in storage. By noon, my mom showed up looking like she'd aged a decade overnight. Her eyes were swollen, her voice soft. Emma was in a psychiatric facility, voluntary admission. The doctors were saying words like delusional disorder and personality disturbance. My mom kept apologizing, saying she should have seen it, should have protected me. I let her talk while I packed the honeymoon suite. My wedding dress hung in its bag, the tear Emma had made clearly visible through the plastic. My mother's fingers brushed it briefly before she helped me fold the untouched bridesmaid gifts. We worked in silence, dismantling what was left of my stolen wedding day. David's family filtered in to help. His grandmother pressed a tiny red horn charm into my palm, muttering about evil eyes and twins. His mom coordinated with the venue to donate all the reception food. Everyone moved with quiet precision, turning chaos into manageable tasks. The photographer sent over pre-ceremony photos. Emma looked radiant in every single shot, almost perfect. But I could see it now. The subtle wrongness in her posture. The tilt of her chin. The micro-expressions that weren't mine. David didn't hesitate, he deleted them all. We spent the afternoon in the hotel's business center, sending out emails to guests, arranging gift returns, canceling the honeymoon flights. Every task felt like unthreading the dream stitch by stitch. A lawyer confirmed what we already knew, no completed vows, no signature, no marriage. My dad arrived around dinner. He'd been at the hospital all day. Emma was sedated, stable, and starting medication. He asked if I wanted to visit. I shook my head. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That night, the wedding party gathered in the hotel restaurant. My bridesmaids hugged me tightly, admitting they'd noticed odd little things about Emma but brushed them off. The groomsmen tried jokes, but no one laughed like they meant it. David and I slipped out early, wandering to the hotel garden. The wedding arch still stood, the roses already wilting in the heat. We stood under it, holding hands, reclaiming it, not with vows or ceremony but with quiet defiance. Later, in bathrobes, we ate Chinese takeout in bed. David showed me the texts on his phone, friends asking questions, his workplace wondering about his honeymoon absence. Together we wrote the only answer we were willing to give: family emergency. Wedding postponed. Thanks for understanding. Around midnight, the hospital called. Emma wanted to talk to me. They said she was calm, medicated, lucid. I said no. When I hung up, the tears finally came, not from heartbreak but from sheer exhaustion. David held me until my shaking stopped. The next day brought a different kind of violation. Our apartment hadn't been robbed, but it had been touched. My mug in the wrong cabinet. David's shoes rearranged. Tiny invasions that made my skin crawl. We spent the day putting everything back, changing the locks. My work extended my leave without question. David sent a fruit basket with a card. We ate the pears while scrubbing Emma's presents out of our home. That evening my parents came with takeout and more updates. Emma had admitted to months of preparation, watching videos of me, memorizing my speech patterns, rehearsing until she could pass as me without hesitation. The depth of it was staggering. They asked if I'd press charges. I refused. I didn't want a trial, I wanted my life back. Some vendors refunded deposits. Others offered credits. The venue coordinator called with sympathy and a standing offer to rebook. Our friends threw a low-key game night. Pizza, board games, no wedding talk. At one point I laughed at a bad charades guess, the first real laugh since that day. David and I started couples therapy, not because we were broken, but to process the storm together. I told the therapist the hardest part wasn't losing the wedding. It was losing the sister I thought I knew. Weeks passed. We went back to work. 3 weeks later, David proposed again, no crowd, no ring box flourish. Just a coffee cup in one hand and the question in the other, whenever you're ready. However you want. I just want it to be you. I said yes, crying into my cereal. 6 weeks later, we married at City Hall. Sundress. Grocery store flowers. 15 minutes. The officiant misread our names once and we laughed until we couldn't breathe. His parents hosted a backyard dinner afterward. String lights. His grandmother cooking enough for 50 people even though there were only 10 of us. No photographers. No coordinator. No audience to fool. Emma's shadow lingered in the background, but she couldn't touch this. My mom took one candid photo of me and David laughing, cake frosting on his nose. Unstaged. Unpolished. Perfect. Life settled. Work. Home. Therapy. Repeat. Emma stayed in treatment. My parents visited her, reporting small breakthroughs. Letters arrived from her, the first self-centered, the second inching toward empathy. I read them both, answered neither. On the 1-year anniversary of the almost wedding, David and I took the day off and did absolutely nothing. Pancakes. Bad movies. No ghosts. When my parents said she might be released soon, we decided to move, 2 hours away. Fresh city. Fresh walls. No history of her. Packing, I found the nail scissors I'd used to pry open the painted-shut bathroom window. The oversized housekeeping uniform I'd worn to reclaim my life. Now they were just objects. Here we were anonymous. Just another newly married couple starting fresh. I started running, pounding the pavement until the anxiety loosened its grip. David sometimes ran with me, our steps in sync without speaking. One night my mom called crying happy tears. Emma had finally grasped what she'd done. She wanted to apologize in person one day. Only if I was ready. No pressure. I hung up feeling empty. Her progress was good for her. But it didn't rebuild the trust she'd destroyed. Our paths had split in that hotel bathroom, and I wasn't sure they'd ever meet again. David found me on the balcony, tea in one hand, blanket in the other, wrapping me in both without a word. He didn't have to ask what I was thinking. He already knew. We sat in silence, watching the city lights come on, not talking about sisters or weddings or stolen identities, just existing in the life we'd built out of the wreckage. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd pictured. But it was ours. Real. Imperfect. Impossible to steal. If you enjoyed today's drama, just imagine what's waiting in the next one. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go find the next train wreck together. Thanks for watching.